They were joined by Matt Seitz, director of the AI Hub at the University of Wisconsin School of Business and a former Google executive. Matt has spent 30 years at the intersection of enterprise technology and business growth, helping giants like Walmart, Amazon, Nike, and McDonald's use AI not just as a tool, but as a strategic accelerator. At Wisconsin, he's now bringing academia and industry to shape the next generation of AI savvy business leaders. Today, we'll dive into how enterprise marketing teams are adapting to AI, how academic research is increasingly influencing business strategy, and what it really takes to turn AI hype into measurable business impact. Matt, welcome to Just Curious.
Thanks, Stu. It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you tell us a little bit about your path from leading digital strategies at Google to now leading the AI Hub at Wisconsin?
Me too, Stu. So it was a genuine pleasure working at Google, and I spent most of my time there working in analytics, helping retailers and other companies just get the most value and impact out of their marketing campaigns. But the last 2 years, when I was deeply involved with and leading our search business for US retail, every customer conversation I had, AI was half of the conversation. And so when the opportunity arose to build this new AI hub at UW, it was just really exciting, both professionally, which is a chance to work at AI, but also across research, industry, and leading students. But then also as a real personal pleasure because my daughter goes to UW, and then both of my parents were professors at the University of Illinois. So the chance to be back in academia, just really, I think, personally gratifying as well.
Awesome. What is the AI Hub?
Yeah, Stu. Listen, just like all, I think, of the world, since ChatGPT launched less than 2.5 years ago, we're all trying to get our head around what does AI mean, personally and for business and society. And that's what the hub is all about as well. We think about, we're focused on the School of Business. So we're really focused on how to business leaders put AI to work to have business impact and results. Then the second is we think about our stakeholders. So we think about the amazing research that's being done at the university and how that can help inform business and society. We think about empowering great students to be the next generation of leaders in an AI fueled business environment. And then how do we work with industry to make sure that our research is relevant and that we're producing the kind of talent that's going to be valuable to them. And ideally, it's a flywheel where better students brings more industry to the table and great research informs both of those as well. So we're really hoping this turns into a flywheel effect, and just helps us meet the moment right now with AI.
What inspired you to focus in on AI?
So a couple of things, Stu. So first of all, I am a tech nerd, so I love technology. And as I think about my path, I started, I've seen, I'd say, 4 business transformations from technology in my life: the PC, the internet, then the smartphone, and now AI. And I think AI will be the biggest of all of them. And one analogy I like to share is, and I've got a visual here, is these shoes. So these are Nike Alphafly carbon fiber racing shoes, and they make you really 4 to 5% faster in a marathon. And for me, given my times, that's about 15 minutes off of my PR.
Wow.
And I think about AI like that. AI is a genuine productivity enhancement at the personal and enterprise level. But the other nuance is there was about 5 years there when if you were trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, if you had these shoes, you had an advantage over everybody who didn't have them. And so it was easier to qualify for Boston because you were running in the super shoes. Now everybody has them, right? And so everybody's competing again on the same level or higher level. And I think AI is a little bit like that as well. Businesses who jump on it now and have a really thoughtful, superior strategy can drive outsized impact ahead of people who are struggling to adopt it.
Let's talk a little bit about skepticism and AI. So marketing teams often face skepticism or maybe internal barriers when implementing AI. How can they effectively communicate the value of AI to their leadership to get buy-in?
Well, marketing is a very often misunderstood function in business. I think I spent a bunch of time with marketers and also working with CFOs who cut the checks for the marketing department. CFOs are often they don't like giving money to marketing because it's very unclear what they're actually getting out. They're getting out of their investment. Marketing sounds kind of fluffy. And so I think AI actually was a tailwind for that because AI helps marketers show more tangible, measurable outcomes of their marketing investments. The challenge for AI in marketing is AI is taking on a lot of tasks that marketers are used to doing on their own. And I think 2 big ones are You know, 10 years ago, if you were running marketing with Google or Meta, you were setting keyword bids, picking terms, uploading SKUs, setting daily budgets, really tactile marketing. It's better to let the AI do it on your behalf now. And actually, if you're doing it by hand, you're actually losing to the AI because the AI is doing it better than you can. And so I think the biggest nuance here is actually helping marketers get comfortable letting AI do the things it's better at, and then abstracting and focusing on the things where the human truly has more value to add than what the AI can do on its own. And I think getting a comfort level on that, and then just the right level of oversight, I think has been the hardest challenge.
What misconceptions do you see from marketing teams about leveraging AI effectively? One may be that if I invest in this, I'm investing in losing my job. What do you hear from people in terms of misconceptions?
If I could show a slide here, Stu, I think that would help conceptualize some of this. Let me put this up on the screen. When I work with marketers, I think there's a set of opportunities that AI really delivers for marketers, and then a set of risks at the same time. And I think balancing those is key. And the misconceptions you asked about are tied up in this. So on the left, AI brings tremendous value in terms of automation and optimization. But at the same time, if you over rely on those things, you can actually get too focused on a single metric, outcome metric. And for example, if that's performance, you can actually let your brand atrophy. And then similarly, you can use AI to drive tremendous personalization and use it to accelerate your content creation. But at the same time, there's correlative risks, which is if I rely too much on AI for personalization, I may lose sight of my customer and knowing who they really are and what they care about. And I also may lose some authenticity in my brand. What does my brand stand for? Because it's relying on AI for communicating that. And so I think there's misconceptions on either side. Some people are too afraid of the risks. Some people are too bullish on the opportunities. And so I think finding the right judgment between those two is really the key.
And how do you recommend people do that? Is it just a gut feel that they should be here and not there? Do they have to make mistakes to see something atrophy or to lose sight of who their customer is? How do you strike that balance? How would you recommend someone strike that balance today? Like you're talking to a marketing team, they're looking to invest in AI to improve how they do their jobs. They don't want to make the mistakes that are on the right. They want to take advantage of what's on the left. How would you recommend they do that?
There's nuances under each of these, Stu, that I think is important for a marketer to understand. For example, in the automations versus brand atrophy, there's an entire domain to decide how much should I invest in brand media and strategy and how much should I put in performance marketing investments. I think getting that right, there's a number of best practices to do that. But let me show one follow-up slide that I think is something I found very helpful for making trade-offs for some of these cases, which is I've worked with a number of customers on something called a balanced scorecard. And so what this is, Stu, is one of the biggest challenges in marketing is probably 50 to 100 KPIs that are spun off of marketing campaigns, whether it's number of clicks, number of conversions, views, likes, bounce rate, etc. And if you don't have a clear line of sight to which metrics do I actually care about, I can get lost in what is good and what is not good. And so I've worked with a number of customers to create this, what we call a balanced scorecard, which is which metrics do I care about and are foundational by business and make sense across the organization. So my CFO believes in them, my chief merchant believes in them, my head of customer service believes in these, and they're consistent across all of something I report on every month and every quarter. It gives us a common language. And then the second case is I can help, as you said, Stu, make intelligent decisions. So, this is just one example of a balanced scorecard. But for example, if I'm an apparel retailer and I'm coming up on my fall launch, I want to be at 30% brand recall. I know if I'm below that, I may not have a strong launch this fall in terms of sales. And so now instead of saying, I think I should spend more on brand this quarter, I actually have a threshold that can help me make a robust decision. And so I think that's one way I've found people to have real effectiveness.
How do you tie that back to AI? Like, I get how that helps you make decisions about performance versus brand, and that's a pendulum that's been swinging both ways over the last, 10 to 15 years. But then tying it back to AI, like, how does one use this to inform where they sit with respect to, automation versus brand atrophy?
I think about it in two ways, Stu. So, way one is the tools that are used to deliver these results are by and large AI related, right? Or driven. And so I use these to set the KPIs that I will tell AI to chase, right? So go get me these results. Um, and then the second, I was on the other end. Let me give you an example that bring this to life, Stu. I worked with this a number of customers who I worked with on thinking about the true impact to their business of their marketing investments. Here's a case where I'm running a campaign and I'm optimizing to return on ad spend, right? Which is for every dollar I invest, I get $10 back out. Now, if I'm optimizing this to say, hey, what's my max revenue? Think about this case. I'm an apparel retailer. I have a leisure product line, and that product line is selling like crazy. I'm getting excess demand. I'm gonna sell it out at the end of the year. I'm getting a great return on ad spend for that. On the other hand, it's been a warm winter, and so my winter coats are not selling well. So I'm getting in stores, I'm struggling to sell this out, and I'm also getting a poor return on ad spend for these coats at the same time. So if I just let my engine optimize to return on ad spend, I'm going to spend all my money on selling the athleisure because it's performing better on a return on ad spend basis. And I'm going to spend nothing on those winter coats. And so, however, that is actually going to drive poor business results because I would have sold all the athleisure anyway. And so, what having a data-driven approach allows me to do is say, I'm actually going to focus on business outcomes, not on just an isolated or blindly driven ROAS.
Gotcha. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about some of your other work. You shared an example of advising a Fortune 500 company on deploying new AI marketing tools. Tell me about that experience. Who came to you? What problem were they looking to solve? And then let's walk through how you went about doing it.
So Stu, this was every customer I worked with over, 15 years, but just to keep it close, the last couple of years. And the target profile is director of marketing, VP of marketing, CMO at a Fortune 500 retailer. And we're having a conversation about, entry point being Google, you're probably my biggest partner in terms of advertising spend. I'm getting pressure to deliver better performance to the organization. My executive team is questioning how much value I'm delivering to the organization and if all that would have been delivered anyway without marketing. And I'm being challenged to go faster in terms of adopting AI. So how do I do all this together? I think that's really the substance of kind of all those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they came to you with that bundle of problems and challenges. Can you walk me through how you help them, I guess, practically kind of evaluate what the opportunity set looked like and then deploy these new AI marketing tools?
Yeah, I think, Stu, I think it was a little bit of the slide I showed at the start, which is thinking about the areas of opportunity and then the risks to watch out. And under that, I have a playbook where I'd sit down and, going into the discussion, think through all of those areas where these things are going well and these things aren't, and where is there additional opportunity. And then we sit down and we have a discussion about these are the opportunities we see, and these are the opportunities they see, and how do we find a marriage there to get the biggest impact for their business. I would say every customer I'd meet with, there's 10 to 20 opportunities to do better. One of the challenges in the marketing space right now is between Google, Meta, Pinterest, TikTok, all the providers. There's a ton of opportunity. And so it's it's not as much would doing X be the biggest bang for my, it would be valuable. It's which one is most valuable in the span of all the options I have to drive more in.
Right. And that playbook, can you share a little bit more about what that playbook looks like without getting into anything sensitive? But you go into an organization like this, and the sort of the first step is to have a conversation about the problems they're looking to solve and what sort of solutions exist, and making sense of which problems are bigger and which solutions, may best fit the problem that you've landed on. Tell me a little bit about that, those first sort of days of a engagement or relationship, and what you're helping them do.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the broadest level, Stuart, the way to think about it is at the top line, um, you know, there's a business strategy that any large company has, which is here's how we're trying to grow, here's our competition, here's our place in the market, and here's how our marketing should enhance that. And on the other end, your marketing campaign, you have a lot of results. So you know how you're performing, you know what you're investing, you know how your performance compares to your peers in many cases. And so it's, I think at the broadest level, it's putting those things together. Say, hey, this is our strategy, and this is going well. I want to be winning in stores. How am I doing in terms of connecting digital to my store footprint? I'm going to be winning in these categories. How is my search demand, web traffic, conversion rates performing in these categories? I want to be really effective in terms of overall distribution of my allocation of my investments. How are they performing on a balanced basis? I want to be stronger on the brand side. I think that's flagging. How do I think about making the right size decisions to do that? And at the bottom level, under that are things like infrastructure and practices. How should my organization be defined? So, one of the things when I shared the example of the inventory relief, the way to do that is actually to have a good relationship with my merchandising team to say, where do we stand on inventory profile? And how is marketing contributing to that? So organization on my setup to have those conversations. And then finally on the bottom end is the infrastructure piece. So saying, do I have the right measurement in place? Do I have the right advertising technology in place to make the investments and practices I need to be successful? So I think one is strategy and execution, and then second is organizational, and then tech infrastructure.
Yeah. Speaking of measurement, how can marketing and other business leaders effectively measure the impact of an investment in AI? Are there metrics or methods you recommend?
It's a really deep area, Stu, and there's a balance. Any vendor you work with will tell you how your investments are performing based on their numbers. And so the challenge you have as a marketer is to say, how do all those investments stack up against each other, given that Meta is telling me one thing, Google's telling me another thing, and Pinterest is telling me a third thing. And so finding a way to stitch that together on the back end through media mix modeling or multi-touch attribution or experiments, I think is one of the big challenges. And I think that in the best world, you have a team that's synthesizing those and making robust comparisons between them. And then the two things I would add that I think are hot buttons personally, one is velocity of experiments and throughput. So one of the best ways to really understand what's happening in your business is to do an experiment. So say, listen, I'm going to take 10 of my markets and I'm going to apply a marketing treatment in these 10 markets. And I'm not going to make those same treatments in other 10, and I'm going to see the difference. And so, for example, if I'm implementing an AI-based marketing tactic there, I will trade that off. The faster I can run that experiment, the more I can run in a year, which allows me to be much faster with adoption of AI tool sets.
You're very focused on making AI more accessible. We have a newsletter, which we've discussed. What do you recommend for business leaders who don't have extensive time to dedicate to understanding AI? One would be to read your newsletter. So you can definitely discuss that. But what else?
Yeah, Stu. So yeah, I'll while we're talking, I'll put up my screen. I have a newsletter that you can sign up for. And what I do with that, Stu, is personally, I love this stuff. I spend 10 to 15 hours a week just keeping up. And the goal of the newsletter is to simplify all that down into a 5-minute engaging read for someone to keep up. Beyond that, though, I'd say two other things I think for a business leader. Number one is you should be hands-on with these tools. There is no substitute for having some degree of engagement and familiarity with what this tool set does and can tackle. And so find ways to try it. This morning, I I asked ChatGPT to predict where I will be personally in a year. It was actually relatively accurate. It was optimistic, so it felt good. But then I said, "What would you recommend I do to achieve this vision of where I'll be in a year?" And it actually gave me some good advice. And so things like that, just getting comfortable with what the tools can do, and it gives you a common language to work with your teams. And then, I think the other thing is there are some other resources that are not onerous to consume. And I would point to actually Just Curious. I think the thing that you're building here, Stu, I've spent some time on the site consuming the videos, the articles. I think they're really excellent. And so find resources like that that you can use yeah, to just get your own familiarity up. I think that's really essential.
And in terms of lessons that business and marketing leaders should take advantage of as they're exploring this new technology for the first time, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned over the last, few years, whether it's, within Google, whether it's more recently within Wisconsin, or maybe it's a combination of both? What are some lessons for people who are looking to explore AI for the first time and, are at the beginning of their journey outside of subscribing to your newsletter and going to Just Curious, both of which I think are excellent recommendations?
I'll give you a couple, Stu. So one is to dispel the mystery. And so I think we've all had that magical moment when we used a chatbot and it did something that just blew our minds. It just feels mysterious, or if you're in a self-driving car and it's driving for you. And so I think getting a real appreciation for actually how it works, which is not that hard. So I mean, yeah, you can watch a 3-hour video for how to program, or just understand that for the most part, what these chatbots are is an aggregation of the internet. And what is the most likely sentence that would be written based on this, what you've asked it to write. And so I think developing an appreciation of what the tools are and how they work, I think demystifies it in a way that is very helpful. The second one that I have found to be pretty important, especially in a business context, is there's AI, there's a lot of wow, AI is going to change the world, and that I do think it will have a major impact on the world. But then when you sit down and you say, okay, I'm a supply chain leader, what does it mean to me? Well, that means I'm doing better forecasting and inventory planning with AI. Or if I'm in HR, okay, that means I'm using it for resume screening or maybe AI-based interviews. If I'm in marketing, it's for ad optimization and content creation. And so, like, breaking the tasks down into the areas where you're actually working in, I think allows it to be very specific to, okay, what do I actually want to use this for, is to the a sort of an amorphous, I'd say scary thing. And then finally, I think you have a lot of leaders on this using Just Curious to, there's a real opportunity to lead here. So I'd say two ways. One is when I talk to students, my daughter's a junior at Wisconsin. ChatGPT had not launched when she started school. And so it's so new that if I'm a college student or a young professional, there's, let's say I'm going into marketing, the CMO has 30 years of marketing experience and I have maybe one. And so there's an asymmetry there, and I'm going to have to catch up to be able to provide that level of leadership. On the other hand, in AI, nobody has 30 years of experience because it hasn't existed, or at least these particular tools haven't existed that long. And so there's really a chance to have an outsized impact. And again, and actually to that point, that isn't just a college student, that's anyone who wants to put in the effort to learn and then take some leadership.
We touched on this earlier, and you just touched on it a bit too, in terms of the tremendous change that is going to be brought to bear due to this technology. There's a lot of fear of AI replacing jobs, especially in marketing. Do you think that AI will ultimately lead to fewer roles in marketing, or will it elevate the value and number of strategic positions?
It's a $1 zillion question, Stu.
Yeah.
I think we're all asking it. If I could share a couple of thoughts on it, I mean, the core answer is none of us know. This technology looks and feels different than anyone we've had in the past, and so I think we're all doing our best to learn and adapt to it. A couple of things specifically, though, that come to mind is one, I'll share an analogy. When 20 years ago, when I was in IT, the wave of outsourcing came along, and we said, "Oh, we're not going to need entry-level programmers anymore because we're going to have people in India or Malaysia or somewhere. They're going to do all our programming for us, and so we won't need entry-level programmers anymore." But what we found is we still did need entry-level people, because yes, we had people over there, offsite doing work, but we needed somebody to tell them what to do and review the outputs they gave and translate it to the business context. And I think AI in some ways is like that. It's not perfect by any means. And so you need someone to work with it and produce a quality result. And so I think I have a lot of optimism that there will be a human who needs to do all the things around the content that's produced by AI. And I think that it could even lead to increased need for jobs. The second frame on a marketing specific basis is, and this is a personal passion point. I've talked to a lot of customers who CMO roles are being down leveled. So the CMO doesn't report to the CEO anymore. They report to the COO or the CFO or the chief merchant. I think in an AI world, marketers are actually more important to the organization because they can drive impact for merchants. They can drive inventory relief for supply chain planners. They understand what their constituents think about the company, and that informs marketing. HR, right? And so I think they touch almost every piece of the business. And so I think there's a world where marketing becomes almost a hub in many ways for the organization and has deep relationships across all the other business functions. And so I think there's an opportunity for actually AI to help elevate marketing's profile in the organization.
Great place to end. Matt, I really appreciate you coming by. Just curious for helping us break down the impact of AI on marketing and what opportunities it may present for those roles in the future. And very much appreciate your time and perspectives.
Thank you, Stuart. It was a real pleasure. Appreciate it.